Hi guys, this is Xiaomi Max aka Max. Welcome back to another video on the channel. So if you're wondering why you should follow the channel, my best ever finish in FPL was actually 30k, and I actually came in second right overall in the world for your Euro 2012 game at fantasyleague.com. So I'm a huge eye test guy, so I basically watch all your Premier League games, and I really like to understand the formation and the positions right of all the respective players. If you actually like the idea of this very early Gameweek 4 watch list, do let me know down in the comments segment below. If the response is good, right, I probably will do a watch list after the Friday and Saturday games. So do let me know. Now, all the graphics that you are going to be seeing is actually done by my guy Inverts. So if you actually need somebody for your graphic designs, this is the guy for you. And he actually charges a very, very reasonable cost. So shout out to Inverts. Thank you for the graphics. Now let's move on to the video proper itself. The first guy that we actually want to talk about, right, is Udogi. So right now, his price is actually at 4.6 mil. He has seen a 0.1 mil rise. Super attacking. If you watch him, right, he's actually very similar to Chiwa and Estupinan, whereby even though he's listed as a left back, in reality, right, he's playing more like a left winger, always involved in the attacks, and he could have gotten more points in my opinion. He was also very, very good, right, in the first two game weeks against Man United and Brentford. Right, I've actually watched all the 3 Spurs games, and he's actually very, very impressive for me so far. So with the way Spurs are playing, right, I think you would really, really want him in your team. And if you actually take a look at the upcoming game week fixtures, right, they have a very easy run of fixtures. Burnley, Sheffield United. I think Sheffield United's attack is kind of struggling, so I expect him to actually get a clean sheet there. You can possibly bench him for Arsenal away. As for Liverpool at home, I would still play him because of the fact that he's actually so attacking, right? He might get attacking returns, right, against that very, very weak Liverpool defense, who still has problems in their midfield. Luton also seems to be struggling in their attack, so another possible clean sheet there, and Fulham at home at game week 9. So I actually, right, also did up some research and realized that for his previous team that he played for, Udinese in the Italian league, his stats are actually pretty impressive, right? 71 games for them, 8 goals and 7 assists. However, do note that, this stats, right, is mainly from the fact that he was actually playing as a left winger or left midfielder instead of a left back. However, that's actually still a very impressive return, right? He actually has 1 attacking return every 4 games if you average it out. So he played mostly of his games, like I said, at left mid, and then he played 4 at left back and 1 as a central midfielder. So his attacking instincts, right, is actually definitely there. So I would say, his play style, right, is actually pretty similar to Ivan Perisic, right, who can play left back, left wing back, and left wing. So speaking about Perisic, right, Perisic is actually not his direct competitor. If you actually watch the games itself, right, Perisic usually subs on as a left winger in the first 3 games, right? He took the place of Son in the first game and Richarlison in the second and third game. So he doesn't seem to be that much of a threat to Udogi. The only real threat I would say is actually Ben Davies, but I don't think it's actually that big a threat. So another thing that I want to talk about is the fact that, Ryan Sessegnon is also his competitor, but that guy is always injured. So as of now, he is not a problem. So one thing that I noticed about Postecoglou, right, is the fact that he's actually very, very willing to make subs, right? He actually made 3 subs in the first game and then 5 subs in both the second and third game. So my guess is probably because the amount of energy that you actually need, right, to play his style of football, and around the 60 to 7 minute marks, right, he loves to sub players off or fresh legs. So don't be too surprised, right, if Udogi actually comes off around the 60-minute mark. I would say that that's actually a good thing because you actually get the clean sheet points, right, if after Udogi subs off and then Spurs concede. So one thing to note is he went off in the 81st minute against Bournemouth, even though nobody touched him, right? That's always the kind of most terrifying situation for players. Nobody touches you and you go down. However, according to Postecoglou, right, he actually kicked the ground, and Udogi actually didn't want to come off, but he wanted to put that Ben Davies on, right, to actually keep the tempo up in the game for them. So I watched the game itself, and he didn't appear to suffer any kind of like a serious injury when he actually walked off, right? Something like a pulled hamstring, he didn't suffer that. He actually walked off really, really normally. So he should be okay, but of course, best is to actually wait for some more news, right? So for me, right, Udogi could very well be the third starting defender, right, in your team, right, after Chilwell and Estupiñán. In my opinion, right, he's actually gonna be the third template pick for a lot of experts team, right, very, very soon. Next player that I want to talk about is actually, right, Raheem Sterling. Now, if you guys actually watch my deadline stream before Game Week 3, right, I've been, going on and on and on about him, right, even on my own Twitter page as well. I've been saying that Sterling is actually way better than Jackson. And to actually show you guys, right, I actually tweeted out on my Twitter page saying that Watkins and Sterling, right, will definitely outscore Jackson. So the first part of it has already came true, right? Sterling had 2 goals and 1 assist against Luton. Jackson only had 1 goal. So the reason why I like Sterling, right, better than Jackson is the fact that Sterling is a tested and proven player, right, in the Premier League. Scored so many goals for Man City and Liverpool, right, over the years. Now, Jackson is a little bit more raw, right? He's actually very young at 22 years old. He only actually, right, really played 1 full season with Villarreal in La Liga, no less, right? He did pretty well, though, in terms of attacking returns. I believe is 1 attacking return almost every other game. However, right, if you take a look at Sterling, right, last year was actually considered a very bad year for Raheem Sterling, right? However, right, he did still get 6 goals and 4 assists, right, in 23 starts. So in a bad season, right, he got 1 attacking return, right, every 2 games, which is actually fantastic. So if that is the kind of bad output that he has, right, I wonder how well he will actually perform when he's actually good. In fact, we actually already know he scores lots of goals and assists a lot, especially during his time at Man City. So for me, I don't really understand the hype behind Jackson. If you actually watch the games itself, right, Sterling was actually magnificent, right, in the game against West Ham in Game Week 2, right. He went past Emerson so many times, and if some of his other teammates were actually on the same wavelength as him, right, he would have easily have gotten an attacking return. So for me, Jackson was more autonomous in that West Ham game. Of course, against Luton, Sterling was back to his dazzling best. Right, if you guys looked at his first goal, right, he just picked the ball out from Gusto and then dribbled past a few players and then slotted it into the back of the net with his left foot. He looks really, really sharp, and for me, he just has that passion right now. For me, right, Sterling should be really high on your list if you don't have Jackson. He will most definitely outscore Jackson, in my opinion, over the next few game weeks, right, given the kind fixture run that Chelsea actually have. I know that it actually takes up that precious midfield slot, but for me, right, I have to assure you that he's definitely worth it. Next player that I actually want to talk about, right, is actually James Maddison. So going into this game week, right, we weren't sure whether he was gonna play, right. However, right, on the deadline stream itself, right, I actually revealed that he was actually training, right. He was actually back in training. So in the game itself, Maddison was actually very, very impressive, right, against Bournemouth. Basically ran the show. Everything good that was done by Spurs, right, was actually going through him, right. He was dictating the tempo, spraying the passes out to the left and right wings. He has free kicks and corners in his lockers, and if Richarlison would allow it, possibly penalties. So for me, right, Maddison is most definitely, right, the heartbeat of that Spurs attack. Now, Spurs in general, for me, right, has been very, very impressive, like I mentioned, right. Kulu actually said in an interview after the Bournemouth game, right, that all the players, right, are actually really enjoying their football again under Postecoglou. So it's actually kind of expected given all the defensive managers Spurs have in the past, right? The likes of Conte, Nuno Espirito Santo, and Jose Mourinho. So you can definitely tell for a fact that the players, right, are actually playing with the leashes off. Now, one thing to actually know that they actually have lots of license to go for is the fact that if you look at their defensive midfielders, right, Sa, Oliver Skip, or Bissouma, right, whoever is playing there, right, they're actually pushing really, really high, right, to support the front attackers. I watched all their 3 opening games, and they're super attacking, and the players actually understand their roles really, really well. So for me, right, Richarlison kind of looks lost up front, in my opinion. I think it's kind of like a confidence thing, right? He has also been, subbed around the 60 and 70 minute mark in the previous 2 games. So for me, right, if you want to wade into the Spurs attack, Maddison is the clear option. Now, we have the return, right, of a fantastic 4 mil defender option in the form of Gusto. So his price has already went up by 0.1. Now, he didn't actually do much for the first assist, right? Like I mentioned, he simply passed the ball to Sterling, and then Sterling basically went on that solo run before he scored. But his second assist, right, the ball into the penalty box for Sterling, right, was actually a fantastic cross. So of course, it all depends at the end of the day, right, as to how fast Reece James actually comes back. So according to the official FPL website, right, Reece James, right, is actually due to be back on the 17th of September. I don't think he will go straight into the lineup, right? It's more likely that he starts the game against Fulham, right, in game week 7 after the international break. So I don't think Chelsea will take any chances with Reece James given his fitness and injury record. So for me, right, Gusto is very much a locked in, right, for the next 3 game weeks, right, at the very, very minimum. And we do know now for a fact that Chelsea most definitely, right, love playing that 5 at the back formation. I think it's possibly to protect, Thiago Silva, who's already 38 years old. That's why they're playing 5 at the back. So we're going to have Chilwell on the left as the left wing back and Gusto as the right wing back, bombing down their respective positions, right? That is how they've been playing for the past 3 games. So you don't actually really have to worry, right, about the fact that Chilwell is very attacking and that will actually affect Gusto, because that's not the case, because Chelsea is actually playing with a back 5 instead of a back 4. So key thing is, I think Gusto is going to be very attacking. So if I actually go and take a look at the stats itself for Gusto's previous club, right, he actually played for Lyon, 61 games at right back, and he actually has gotten 6 assists. So I think that's, a pretty decent return as a fullback, I would say. And given that he's actually still very, very young, he's only still 21 years old, right, I see him, having more room to improve. Now, for me, right, the best 3 players to go for Chelsea right now, right, is Chilwell, Gusto, and Sterling. So if you have Jackson, I would still say Gusto is value for money, right? Especially if you need to free up funds elsewhere. I wouldn't be too worried with that Chelsea double up in defense alongside Chilwell, given, the easy games that they have upcoming. So Gusto is someone that we should really be looking at. So talking about freeing up funds, right? We have another issue with Gabriel. We saw Zinchenko on the bench again this week in the lineup, right? Gabriel didn't start, and instead, Arsenal actually surprisingly, right, started with Keywall, whose main position is actually at centre back. Now this tells me 2 things. Number 1, right, Mikel Arteta, right, actually wants to keep Kai Havertz in their midfield role. That's the reason why Partey is still playing at right back. And number 2, right, Arteta basically doesn't trust Gabriel anymore. Now, the thing is, when Partey plays as a right back, we all know that he moves into that midfield role. So essentially, right, Arsenal is playing with a back 3. I've watched Gabriel quite a number of times, right, and I can tell you, right, this guy is no slouch. He has pretty good pace, and he can definitely, right, play as the left centre back in a back 3. So I don't think it has anything to do with tactics or Gabriel not being good enough, right? I think he started something like 70 consecutive games for Arsenal, right, before this season. So for me, something must have happened between him and Arteta behind the scenes that we don't know about, or maybe he is moving clubs, right? After all, right, I've already spoken about the fact that Madrid and the Saudi clubs are actually interested in him. Right? So whatever the reason, it's actually time to move Gabriel on now. He is no longer nailed, and he's actually very, very prone to being rotated out or bench even if he starts the next game. So for a 4.9 mil defender, right, in my opinion, it's just not worth it. So in terms of, price falling, right, he's actually at 70% right now. I fully expect, right, to see his price drop, right, by the time, right, game week 4 comes around. So it's a big, big sell for me. So frankly, for me, right, it's not just Gabriel. If you own an Arsenal defender, right, they have actually been looking really shaky in defense, right, since the last 10 games of the previous season. And I believe they actually gotten about 1 to 2 clean sheets in that 10-game run. And most definitely, right, they have carried that poor defensive form, right, over to this season as well. So personally, right, I would be looking to move any Arsenal defenders on, right? We have so many more other good options. Now, we have a very, very cheap and good player in Semenyo. So if you're actually on a wild card or just looking to downgrade your strikers like João Pedro, look no further than Semenyo, right? He was actually very, very impressive against Spurs yesterday. Right, he was running the channels, right, dropping back to help out the defense, right, looks really threatening going forward. So Bournemouth is actually playing a 4-4-1-1 formation. So Semenyo is actually more of a number 10. But of course, when they don't have the ball, he most definitely, right, drops out into the midfield to help out the defense. Now, the way that he carries the ball and the strength he has, right, really, really impressed me in the games against Spurs. So previously, right, he was actually playing for Bristol City. He played for them for about 121 games as a center forward mainly, right? Sometimes out on the left, on the right. He has 21 goals along with 22 assists. So, that's an attacking return, right? Every 3 games. I would say that's actually very, very impressive for him. Still young, only still 23 years old, which means that again he has lots of room to improve. Now, if you need extra funds and you're looking to downgrade from João Pedro, or even if you're on a wildcard, right, I would say the best 4.5 million striker for me right now, right, is Semedo, right? So do consider him. So talk about João Pedro. We have yet another issue with him, right? We got news that Ferguson was starting straight from the De Zerbi press conference. Now, Enciso was out, right? So we thought maybe João Pedro will start behind Ferguson. We were actually very wrong. If you guys actually watched my previous video, I did mention that De Zerbi makes Pep Roulette look like a joke, right? De Zerbi is the king of rotation. He was regularly rotating his keepers last season between Sanchez and Steele, right? I talk about rotating his right backs between Pascal Gross and Veltman last year, as well as his attackers. What happened in this game, right? He duly dropped Steele for Verbruggen, right? So Steele is another problem right now. And Welbeck started behind Ferguson instead of João Pedro. Now, during the press conference, right, where he actually announced that Ferguson will start, right, De Zerbi did say that Ferguson actually deserves to play and he's actually an important player for us. And he also said that he played João Pedro in the first game to give him a better understanding, right, of Brighton's style of play, right? However, he did also say that Ferguson, right, understands the Brighton way really, really well, given the fact that he has been playing with them for a year. So what this tells me is that, you know, João Pedro is not at the top of his list. Welbeck seems to be the number one choice for De Zerbi, right? He could also start with Gross at number 10 and Welbeck up top. He could start with Ferguson up top and Welbeck as the number 10 as in this game, right? He can also start with Ferguson up top with Lallana as the number 10. So my point is that there's actually so many combinations he can go for. Once the Europa League starts, right, it's going to get even more chaotic for you. So if you are using João Pedro as a first 11 player, I suggest, you know, you either move him on or strengthen your midfield and defense, right? Don't expect him to be able to play that first 11 role for you very well. Personally, right, he's a sell for me because even when he plays, right, you have the issue of him getting subbed off early again. Now, most of you, right, are probably wondering, right, what to do with Martinelli, right? He only got 1 assist in the 3 games so far. If we take a look at the minutes, which was a risk with him, right, or the, you know, the concern with him, right, he actually gotten, you know, lots of game time, say for Gameweek 2, whereby he got hooked at the 70th minute mark. So we now know that Jesus is back in the team, right? He came on for a 1-minute cameo against Fulham. And we also have this narrative that Martinelli, right, plays really, really badly whenever Nketiah starts. And he's way better when Jesus plays, right? Trossard was actually the one that started in the previous game against Fulham. However, right, Martinelli still didn't return. But again, if you actually watch the game, right, Martinelli actually looked really dangerous against Fulham. So for me, the points potential, right, is definitely still there. The only question for me is, what's the rest of your midfield looking like? You know, with the way the season is going so far, you most definitely, right, need to have returns from your midfielders. Quite simply because, right, so many midfielders in the game are actually scoring points. So he has United, Everton and Spurs in the next 3 games, which is definitely not easy. Now, if you have a double up of him and Saka, right, I will still wait and see if he starts getting more points, right, once Jesus starts again in the team. Even though personally, I would say that Eddie Nketiah, right, might very well start most of the games, right, given how well he has done when Jesus was actually absent, right. In the 3 games that Jesus was actually not in the starting 11, right, Nketiah scored 2 goals in 3 games. Not to mention the fact that he's actually playing very, very well. So he's actually making a huge claim for that number 9 spot. So I would just say possibly, right, it's a wait and see for me. Now, if you have Bruno, Rashford, Saka, Martinelli as your midfielders, right, I personally, right, would still prefer to move off either Bruno or Rashford first before I actually get rid of Martinelli. Quite simply because I feel like Arsenal is a way more stable team compared to Man United at the moment. So, I want to give you guys, right, some early City and Sheffield United team news, right? So, shout out to Raptor, right? He actually tweeted this out saying that Akanji and Foden has not been seen traveling with the squad to Sheffield United. So, rumors are that Foden will still go to the game. However, he's going to be traveling alone. So, the question is, why is Foden traveling alone, right? We have speculation that he's ill. It could also be that, you know, he actually has some personal issues to attend to. Now, if he has an illness, right, he might not even start. So, like I mentioned in the deadline stream, right, we already have Bernardo Silva, right, back. So, I won't be surprised, right, if Bernardo Silva actually replaces Foden in the first 11. Now, if Akanji doesn't play, most likely, right, Walker will start at right back. I see Gabriel starting at left back. He's gonna be that inverted fullback with Ruben Diaz and Ake, right, as the two center halves, right? That is my guess. So another thing is, I would say, we actually have a League Cup midweek games as well as the transfer window closing right this week. So expect there to be lots of injuries and player movements between these few days. So definitely for sure, I can see some potential big last minute movement, given that the Saudi league is actually pushing to sign all the top players. So kill your Mo Salahs and your Gabriel, possibly leaving their respective clubs. So I would stress for you guys, right, to actually be patient and hold off on all your transfers. So once again, right, shout out to Inverts, to all the graphics, right? These are all the stuff that he has actually done for me. Thank you so much. If you actually want to, get him to do graphics for you, his link will be down in the description below. Now, I will actually be possibly doing a stream, right, 30 minutes after the Newcastle and Liverpool game. That's the last game for Gameweek 3. So if you guys would actually like to see it, right, do let me know down in the comment section below. I'm going to be live on YouTube and on Twitch. All the links will be down in the description below. And I'll also be reacting to all the games in Game Week 3, as well as telling you guys who to buy and sell, and of course, answering your questions. So that's all from me. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you guys want to see more great FPL content, do hit that sub button, alright? And I'm out. Take care, guys.